Hey everybody, welcome to the stream today. Um, I have I've taken a bit of a break for the past 2 weeks. Last week, let me I'm just getting everything moved over. Are looking good. All right. Anyway, last week I just took a week. I needed some time. Just last Sunday I was doing family stuff. Monday and Thursday I needed needed a bit of time to focus on some mental health stuff. Um, so definitely take care of that stuff. Um, it's very important. And you know, if you feel like you need a break, um, do yourself a favor. Make sure you're doing what you need to do. Anyway, um, just want to make sure that all of our upgrades are in place right now. So that's what we're going through right now. We just upgraded Angular. We um, just upgraded NX. Yeah, this week. Um, so next Sunday, I will be traveling to Monorepo World, um, which is the NX conference. Um, I was invited to go by the NX team, and I'm very excited to be there. So next week I'll be in Mountain View um, at the Computer History Museum. So if you guys are at Monorepo World, come say hi. Hey, TVD Gamer. Things are going well. I'm feeling rested, feeling a little bit more mentally there. Um, I guess just to give you guys a little bit of information, a couple years ago, I was I was diagnosed with some pretty significant depression. Um, and for people who aren't that familiar with depression, depression isn't about being sad, like a lot of people say, right? Like you'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm so depressed," and what they really mean is they're sad. That's not what depression is. My best explanation for depression is I know what I need to do. I know it needs to be done. Um, I just can't do it. It's like everything inside of me, like you need to get this done, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't care, right? That's depression for me. It's like um, all of my willpower has been taken away, and I have no willpower, right? Um, and so every once in a while, I'll struggle with that, and when that happens, it's best to just focus and recenter and figure out what's going on and get back in a good state of mind. So things are going well, but you know, it, everybody struggles with things, right? And that's the reason that I'm okay talking about stuff like that. Um, is um, it's not like I want everybody to understand that everybody struggles, um, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just part of being human. Um, And so I really enjoy reading like the old Stoics. Um, so back in the early like Roman Empire and back when the Greek Empire was big, the Stoics were very popular. Um, and the Stoics have some very interesting things, very interesting take on the world, right? Like I don't agree with everything that the Stoics say, but there is a lot of it that I think is very helpful for myself. And I've been back reading like Marcus Aurelius and things like that. And um, one of the big things, key takeaways is there's a lot you can't control. right? You can't control other people. You can't control just kind of the randomness of the world. Um, there's just a lot that you really can't control. What you can control is how you react to it and what you do about it, right? Um, and your attitude and your own personal outlook, right? There's so many things that you have no control over. Um, but one thing that you will always have control over is yourself, um, to an extent, right? Um, Sometimes even that is not true. Um, and so, a lot of people think that Stoicism is about, you know, showing no emotion or things like that. That's not the case. Um, Stoicism is more about taking a situation, analyzing it, and determining what is my best course of action based on, what's happened. Um, and so every once in a while, I like to reread that, recenter myself in a lot of those principles, right? Because they encourage analytics, they encourage question asking, they encourage thought before action, um, which are all things that I value and that I work on having. Um, so I've been back reviewing that, and it's very helpful. Um, so anybody out there who is kind of struggling with the chaos of stuff, if Stoicism works for you, you should take a look. It's been helpful for me. Um, yeah, let's let's take a look at what we've got going on. Right now I am upgrading the TypeScript ESLint stuff. Um, then I'm just going to use NCU to upgrade everything else. Um, and then we will get back into the code. Um, while I've been, you guys probably understand this just as well as I do, right? But an engineer's brain is never off. Um, so like even if you're not at work, your brain is still working on work. Your brain is still working on like right, like streaming. Um, I enjoy streaming, but streaming is still work, right? And so my brain is constantly working on how do we get to xState, right? Um, One thing that I'm beginning to realize is a lot of times the like the store features, right? The custom store features from um, the Signal store, those tend to line up really, really well with our xState states, um, which I'm very excited about. Um, and when we get into xState, I can't wait to show you kind of my thoughts on this. Um, so very excited about that. Um, and then I'm really excited to just get into xState because I think xState is going to give us some really powerful tools. I have been doing a lot of thinking about some more DDD concepts. Like quite often, I don't think DDD is a good fit and by DDD I mean domain-driven design, right? Quite often, I don't think domain-driven design is a good fit in the front end. It's very, very rigid framework. Um, well, it's not supposed to be. If you listen to the author of the original person who came up with DDD, and his name escapes me right now, but he was speaking, and a lot of people take it to be very rigid. It's not supposed to be. So I like to pick and choose parts of it. Eric Evans, thank you so much, TBD Gamer. Very helpful. Yeah, Eric Evans came out recently, and he said that he wished that he'd written the book in a different order because so many people get hung up on the domains and the structuring and all of the other things about domain-driven design that they forget a lot of the amazing tools like value objects, right? And he wishes that he'd started with things like value objects. Um, you guys may have heard the term like primitive obsession. Um, and that is a very common issue with a lot of programming. So I'm really thinking about, um, I see a lot of primitive obsession in the code that I work with on a day-to-day basis. Um, and primitive obsession shows up in a lot of places. And I don't want to go into it too deep because I would like to discuss it on stream and show some ideas about, where I think DDD, domain-driven design, really shines in Angular. Um, Obviously, understanding domains and organizing our libraries and packages around that is a big part of it. Um, but avoiding that primitive obsession. Um, and by primitive obsession, what I mean is um, a classic example, and one that's had me on this thought for a long time, is how do you handle a phone number, right? Um, and if we look at most databases at most companies, right? And so I'm not even calling out like my own personal company, but most people when they think about operadores, got a mechanical keyboard, 65%, a Logitech light mouse, and a Sony headset. I'm getting geared, man. So if you guys don't know, operadores is um, he he's a good friend from Italy, and he's been looking for a job for a while. He just found a job. Super stoked for you, man. He's joining the dark side. He's joining React, and I'm just mainly teasing him. I think it's great. Any work is great. Um, that's not true. Most work is great, right? Doing something in programming is going to be helpful. Uh, there's always exceptions to the rule, right? If what you're doing is illegal, then probably not great work, right? Um, so anyway, he just got a job. This is about to go down bad, man. To cheese this one because of the cost, man. Yeah, yeah. Inflation has been crazy everywhere, and it's just I, I don't know. It's crazy how expensive everything is. Uh, Eventually, I don't know. I think we're like the 1980s was kind of the decade of excess, right? That was the decade that I was raised in. So I was 3 years old when 1980 came around. I'm definitely a Gen Xer. I'm right on the end of Gen Xers, right? So in 1980, I was 3 years old. I remember the 80s very well. The 80s was a crazy decade where just everything was cheap and it was really easy to do stuff, right? Um, the 90s was kind of starting to come down. The 2000s we kind of crashed. 2010s things got a little bit worse. Here in the 2020s, that decade is long gone, right? Everything's expensive. Everybody's struggling. And I'm not saying that people weren't struggling during the 80s, but it was definitely a different mindset than it is now. Um, and I mean, it's crazy to think just how long ago that was. Um, I don't know. I've been looking at Golang, React, Angular. They're all the same, right? TV Gamer's been reading Minko, right? Minko's talk at one of the JS conferences was about how all frameworks are essentially doing the same thing. The media made it out to say that he was saying that all frameworks are the same. Um, at a base level, they're doing a lot of the same things. Things are bad. Golang is what JavaScript wants to be once it grows up. It's kind of nice. JavaScript has a colored history, right? You guys are all probably aware that um, back in the early Mozilla days, um, the Mozilla browser, right? They wanted to add a scripting language. And early on, Internet Explorer was using VB script as one of its scripting languages. And they didn't want to use VB script, so they came up with a language, and it wound up being a very functional language. It was put together in a couple of days. Um, Java was the biggest programming language at the time, so they added a couple of like C-esque things to it, right? That's why JavaScript has a lot of C style stuff to it, and they added some Java isms to it and things like that to hopefully appeal to Java developers, and it worked, right? Because people picked up JavaScript that eventually became ECMAScript, right? Um, and luckily killed off VB script because VB script was a mess. Um, yeah, things are over engineered, but the reason that they're over engineered is that it was put together so fast, and now they've got to fix a lot of the things, right? The very loose typing was very good, but it also led to some difficult situations, and that's where the over engineering comes in, right? The libraries are trying to fix things um, that JavaScript and ECMAScript itself has problems with, right? And then the new specs are trying to come in and fix those. The problem is that we've got to maintain backwards compatibility, um, and so it takes a really really long time to deprecate things, right? Like the sheer volume of code out there that is running on jQuery and like old versions of jQuery dwarfs all the code that's written in all the other frameworks combined, right? So if you ever want to feel insignificant, just go look at how much code is written in jQuery, how many websites run on jQuery, um, and then maybe you reconsider your job and be like, yeah, I'm just going to do jQuery for the rest of my life. I don't recommend that. But that's the big issue, right? Is we've got to maintain the backwards compatibility. In Angular, there are classes, and in React, there are functions. Look at every single backend tech and framework, for example. They're basically all very similar. For example, if you see a router code where you put views controllers together, actual API endpoint, you can quickly see what it does, and I understand in every language. Uh, there are frameworks for backend code too, um, and we've used some of those here, right? So, like Nest, um, Nest.js is a backend framework for Node, and we used it with my mind is drawing blanks on the database. My mind's just drawing blanks today. Um, it'll come to me. We used it with another database, right? And we used an ORM mapper there. Once you start getting into frameworks, right? So once you start using ORM mappers, once you start using things like Nest, you can't even say that about backend, right? It's the frameworks, right? Um, and Joe, don't ban me. Um, developers are just better. Um, yeah, man, you are opening a can of worms there. You won't get banned for that. But there's so many things that back end developers do that front end developers don't understand. There's so many things that front end developers do that back end developers don't understand. And from each camp, they both look at the other side and they go, "Oh, they're only doing this, right? Or they're only doing that." I hear so many back end developers tell me that it's just putting pixels on the screen. That's what front end developers do. They just put pretty, right? They just make what we do pretty. Hey, Marcus, I'm about to get you banned. What do you mean we're not actually all full stack? Oh man, I've even during the days of DevOps and stuff like that, I don't think anybody was truly full stack. You can't be. Um, and so that was always one of my biggest frustrations, right? Is um, T-shaped skills. Did you guys ever? I hated those discussions. Do you guys ever get the discussions on T-shaped skills? Um, so, ooh, very, very bright. Where are my settings here? You know, there's a way to darker, dark mode. There we go. There we go. All right. Um, so everybody was talking about for a long time T-shaped skills, right? Where every dev needed, this is the knowledge that they needed, right? Very, very broad knowledge across everything. And then, for some things, you could get a little bit of depth and a little bit of depth, but you needed a lot of depth in one thing, right? And then, you could have some more depth here and here, right? And this was the ideal developer, right? They had a whole bunch of knowledge about a whole bunch of things and a little bit of depth. They were very, very like, so for most front end devs, this would be, the framework and JavaScript and whatever, TypeScript. For most back end devs, this would be whatever language, right? This would be Rust, Python, .NET, Java, whatever, right? Go, and then, whatever you're using, um, things like that, right? And then, you know, you probably needed some back end as a full stack. I hated this discussion. Um, like I understand the point of it, but this isn't really what you want. Um, what you need is you need specialists um, that can go in and create the solutions that you want. At the top, sure, you need some generalists, right, that have broad knowledge that can understand the whole system. Your eyes are dying, exactly. Yeah, if you're doing front end, specialists are bad for business. That's a good point, Aurelores. Specialists are bad for business. Um, Specialists are what you need if you want to succeed, but business wants to be able to take a developer and say, okay, we're done with this portion of the front end. You need to help with the back end, right? They want to treat developers like they're pluggable anywhere, right? Um, and that's why a lot of times you'll see a lot of effort invested into AI and things like that, right? Because they want to treat developers just like a widget that they can say, oh, you need to solve this problem, right? And that doesn't always translate. Um, and if you want to create the best experience, you're going to need specialists, right? Um, your specialization may encompass other areas of knowledge to a certain degree, but you need some people to specialize. You're going to need front end devs. You're going to need people who understand your framework. You're going to need back end devs. You're going to need data scientists, right? You're going to need people who understand your database and things like that. And then you're going to need the generalists that can put all of this together and help people work together. Um, yeah, you do not need a good experience. Good enough is sufficient. And yeah, um, that is true until your competitors come along and kick your ass with a good experience, right? Um, when you're first to market, good enough is going to get you really far, right? Um, what you need to not fall into is the trap of good enough, but you need to avoid the trap of perfection, right? So at both ends of the spectrum, there's this trap where it's easy to get stuck. And if you get stuck in either end, your projects stop progressing. Um, the truth of the matter is, the flashier your website, quite often you'll draw more users, right? Um, people are attracted to the eye candy. People are attracted to the haptic feedback. People are attracted to all sorts of stuff like that. When you're first to market, you need to beat everybody there because you want to build that initial audience, right? Um, or even early, right? You want to build that initial audience. You want to get those features out. That's where good enough is very powerful, right? When you want to maintain that market share, because as soon as you build a market, you're going to see that there will be people out there going, hey, look at how much money they're making doing that. We can do that too. And we can do it better. And they're right. Because all of the learnings that all of the bruises and bumps and scrapes that you took to get to that initial market and build that successful market, they don't have to go through. They can learn from, where you are and what you've got, and they can look at your set of things like that, right? They're going to have their own bumps and scrapes along the way, but they'll probably do it better, and they'll probably make theirs look better. Um, and so that's where the trap of good enough hurts, first to market, right? Um, that's where you need to go back and start polishing what you've got so you keep your users. We fail on good enough though, because in general we misunderstand what good enough means. We keep treating like it's the fastest to market and we'll finish it later. There's never exactly TBD gamer, and that's why a lot of people have gone away from like the concept of MVP, right? Minimum viable product, right? Nobody's ever turned a pair of roller skates into a car, um, right? The classic MVP diagram, right? We start with roller skates and then we go to a scooter and then a bicycle and then a car, right? Nobody's ever done that. Nobody ever goes back to turn those roller skates into a car. What they do instead is they try to strap, rockets onto the roller skates to make them go as fast as a car, but guess what? Now you've got a much more dangerous mode of transportation. Um, a lot of smart companies have gone away from MVP to minimum usable product or something like that, right? Looking for the minimum product that will make your users happy. Um, so yeah, you can't say no. We keep being tools and don't say no. Yeah, and that's the eternal struggle, right? And it really depends on the strength of the market and things like that too. But you guys are both very right that the eternal struggle that we've got is, and this is by design and it's healthy at companies, right? You have products whose job and goal is to get as many features to the users as possible, right? That's their job. They're like, they need to be looking at what your users want and getting you there. If your product's not doing that, your product's not doing your job. The other side of the coin is engineering, and engineering needs to look at what product wants to offer and say, this is how much we can do, this is where we can get you, right? And so engineering needs to be setting expectations, and product needs to be dreamers, right? And that's kind of the way, that's the way a healthy company should work. Product should be dreaming things up. Engineering should be saying, yeah, we can do that. This is how much we can deliver this, in this 2 weeks. This is how much, however long your sprint is, right? This is how much we can deliver in this sprint. This is how much we can deliver in the next sprint, right? And then product and engineering, they work together to prioritize, okay, well, this feature is the most important. Let's get that done, right? And so, based on the finite resources and based on product's dream, this is what we can give users, and this is where we think users will get the most benefit. That's the healthy situation. I don't even think I've ever worked in a company where there's truly that healthy balance. Typically, and this is what Obradores and TBD Gamer are touching on, is in a lot of companies, product is way overpowered, right? And they drive everything, right? And quite often, sales is part of that too, right? Where sales has sold something that product has dreamed up, it doesn't exist. Guess whose job it is to make sure that it exists, right? Um, so there's always that eternal hatred between sales and development, right? There is the flip side of the coin where engineering is way stronger than product, right? And that's also a dangerous situation because you don't release features. Um, and if you're a company where engineering is more powerful than product, and you're a market leader, um, that's a dangerous place to be because now engineering just keeps saying no, product can't get new features in, and your competitors come and start just eating you alive, right? And you can start to see that kind of with the way things are going for Meta, um, right? Originally, Facebook, they're trying to delay things by buying popular pieces of software, um, but you need to you need to be delivering things that your users want. Um, and the unfortunate thing for Meta is Meta's customers and users are not the people using their platform. The people using their platform are the product. Um, the advertisers are Meta's customers and users. And they are delivering stuff to their customers and users, but their product is leaving, right? Because they don't want to be a product. And so, right, so many levels to business. Um, but very good discussion. Best tech business, a developer, because at least you understand part of your bottlenecks. See, and what's wrong? I see a lot of developers, especially gaslight non-tech people, because they do not know about how much tech stuff takes to set. I also think, and um, developers quite often don't understand the business side of things. We're very good at solving technical problems, um, but business can be a real challenge for us. Um, and so I think it takes both making day in the life of a developer where they do not do anything for days on end and they are surprised that they got fired. Yeah, that's important too. Um, if the developer stays in touch, I get it, but so many developers step away and lose reference. Exactly. It's so easy for developers to get stuck in kind of that ivory tower, right? Um, and yes, exactly. Trivializing things that aren't trivial. Um, right? So it's very easy for developers to look at things and be like, oh, that's simple. Why don't we just solve it this way? Well, you don't solve it. It's not a simple solution. If it was a simple solution, it would have already been solved, right? And that you're 100% correct, TBD gamer. Um, quite often, what looks like a simple solution has a lot of nuances that the domain knowledge is there. Yeah, and Obrador is totally correct, right? And that's why systems get rewritten so much and there's so much churn in the systems. It's simple for the 2 years that you're there and you understand the nuances of the code that you put together and all the little monkey patches that you put together because you didn't understand the nuances of the domain and you know where those little patches are everywhere. And then as soon as you move on to the next project, this is legacy. We don't understand it. Time for a rewrite. In comes a new powerful charismatic developer who creates, right? This is a simple problem. I don't know why we did it this way, the old system. Let's just do it this. It's not that simple, dude. It's not that simple. That's why it took 2 years to get a working product, right? And hey, Minu, it's been a while. I recognize your name. And you let yourself rush to do things. Yep, exactly. Um, yes, yes. And trying to please the business rather than being the expert. And being the expert is often difficult. Um, being the expert, there's a fine line to walk there, right? Because sometimes the business will snap back if you're too rigid, and if the business snaps back and you've been too rigid, you might get snapped, right? Um, so very very insightful there, TBD gamer. Um, I would be happy to have you on my team anytime. You understand the intricacies of development. Um, so yeah, um, very good description. You guys sniped me right in the middle of upgrading, but we're done with our upgrades. Um, let's jump back into the code. Actually, I want to see the state of the code because it has been about 2 weeks, and I'm a little bit fuzzy on where we were. Before we jump back into the code, I just want to do um, let's just run our tests, right? Actually, let's run our linter first and just see what issues we've got there. I'm the type of person to put a React microservice in your Angular application. Be careful if we ever work to TBD for Abra. Um, you would keep me on my toes. I'd be happy to work with you too. But yeah, just spent 3 days doing agile training, and one of the things people kept repeating is the team consists of all the components, not just the developers developing the software. And that is very true, right? The team does consist of um, all the components. What's interesting is the same people preaching that when the project isn't going well, who are the people who get in trouble, right? Um, and that's the funny thing. Um, not be trusted in your Angular. Exactly. I I think Abradores is I look at you, man, as true chaotic neutral. Um, you're the type of person that isn't out to be malicious, but um, every once in a while you just want to introduce something to see what people do. And promises just because it's easier. Exactly, right? Chaotic neutral. It's not that you're out to be evil. You may accomplish evil, you may accomplish good. You're just chaotic. You just right, whatever I need to do to get things done is what I'm going to do. I love it. All right. So our linting is in the same place where it is. I haven't figured out this thing with Storybook. I keep trying to tell it, hey, don't do this, but I don't. We'll figure it out later. I don't have it in the CI/CD pipeline, so it's not necessary. Um, let's run our tests. I think our tests are in a bad state. Um, one thing to note, a little while ago, I noticed that NX, if you ran with the dash dash randomize flag, the the caching wasn't working. NX has since fixed that. Um, so that's one of the amazing things about them is they're very very quick to fix issues in their product, and their product is designed with their target audience in mind, right? Um, their target audience is developers, and this is actually doing pretty well. Yeah, so there are just some small fixes to make, but we're in a fairly decent place. Like I expect these errors because we're tearing apart the grid store. Um, and that stuff all worked. All of the keyboard navigation still works, even though we're tearing apart the store and we just worked on that. Um, so yeah, I expected these two to fail and we'll fix them. Um, we're in a good spot. You guys may have seen before the stream that I just upgraded WebStorm. This is the first time opening it after upgrading it. Um, I just finished a campaign of XCOM 2 War of the Chosen using the amalgamation mod. This is me messing around with some more mod settings. Amalgamation was it was a lot of fun. Um, highly recommend if you guys like XCOM 2, I highly recommend the amalgamation mod. It really changed my playthrough. Um, Instead of having the same core group of a ranger, a sniper, right, and whatever else. But I always had a ranger, I always had a sniper, I always had a grenadier, I always had a specialist, and then the last two were, you know, a hero, like whatever. Um, they were usually a hero, and if I had unlocked like the psi operative, then I almost always had a psi operative just because they could remove any negative stuff on my team, right? Um, Man, amalgamation completely changed that because I couldn't rely on abilities being there. So I had to puzzle mode. We've got our computed. We're managing selected. I think we've moved a lot of stuff into the state. Um, and there's a lot of stuff here that we don't really have to do as much. Like I used to use mutative a lot with component store because um, I wanted to keep my state immutable, and mutative was really good for that. With Signal Store, I don't find that I need to worry so much about the mutability of my state, right? I don't need to keep it immutable as much. I still like to use immutable state and immutable pieces of state, but because of the way that Signal Store allows you to interact with the state, I can't really mutate the objects. So stream is down. Things seem to be okay. The stream restarted. I wonder what caused that. I apologize for that. I'll go back through and take a look. Um, oh, sorry about the ads, man. Um, I'm running the bare minimum I can run on Twitch for my affiliate level without incurring penalties from Twitch. Um, and I understand that they've got to make money for their platform, so I'm not going to complain about that. I just want you guys to know that I am trying to run as few. Um, I'm trying to run as few ads as possible, but I have to run a certain amount just to meet my obligations with Twitch, and so that's what we're running. Um, So I do apologize for that. I try to make my content as free as possible, but I recognize that it still has to be paid for. And so there's going to be some ads. Oh, yeah, that was interesting. I was watching Pirate Gaming do a breakdown. Um, on his Twitch revenue versus Twitch subscriptions and things like that. And the reason that Twitch doesn't run ads when you subscribe is they actually make more money on your subscription than they make on the ads, which is crazy. What WebStorm theme is that? Take a look. I'm using Gradiento, and I'm using the Deep Ocean. Sometimes I swap between that and Midnight Blue, but I really find Deep Ocean to just be the most calming and the closest to what I use in VS Code. So yeah, it's a Gradiento theme, and it's the Deep Ocean version. There are some paid themes, but I haven't paid for it. There's some other, like some of the green themes I really like, but I just find, for whatever reason, I'm very attracted to blue, right? So you'll notice a lot of my wardrobes have blues in them, and a lot of things that I pick are some form of blue. I just find blue calming and things like that. So yeah, I don't know how you can do it. I mean, the white there, the selection at the beginning of lines. Are you talking about this stuff right here, the rainbow indent stuff? Um, so this is the rainbow. If I can spell rainbow. Um, it's called indent rainbow. Um, and it will work with your IDE. And so you can control the indent levels and the grayness and stuff there. It's showing, yeah, my indentation level. But you're finding that distracting, Alvarez? Um, I so I like my IDE to give me a lot of feedback on the code. It just helps my brain process the code, right? And so this stuff, the indent level, is very helpful to me in general. Um, anyway, let's start taking a look at what we've moved over and what we haven't. Oh, the command stack. That's what we were looking at. Um, because we've got pencil marks as things to do. I believe we just finished the puzzle mode. Yeah, it has the toggle puzzle mode in it. Um, so I think we were moving into the command stack or the undo redo. Um, so let's take a look at, and then we've got the solver piece in there too, and then checking for wins. And there's a lot in this. Like this store is huge. It's 750 lines of code. That's crazy. Let's start with the command stack stuff. And so to our grid store, we're going to follow the same pattern that we've done before. We're just going to do, with methods, and the methods that we're going to bring across um, are going to be our undo redo stuff, right? So let's see what our grid store needs to do the undo redo. So if we start at the top, mode has error selected next to focus. I don't remember if we moved that one over. I'll worry about it later, but command stack is definitely necessary. So we'll add this in. Um, Actually, we don't need to add it in because I believe it's already part of the state. But should it be is a good question. I don't think it should be. Because there's nothing here that means that the command stack and the current command index, I don't think these should be a part of the state. Um, I actually think these should be moved out. So let's do that. So the grid store is using the grid state, right? Because initial state is coming from grid state. Um, to do this, it's going to break the old store, but that's okay. That's going to show me where this stuff needs to be added, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to export interface. And this is going, it's not going to be an interface. I want to do a type here. We're going to export a type, and yeah, grid command stack sounds good. And there we go. Inside of here, we're going to add those two back, which means that we can take this out, right? Because we don't need those. They're part of the command stack. We're using a command stack pattern to do our undo redo. And so with the undo redo, we're also going to make this just a part of its own state. So it's now been moved out of initial state. So we want to export const and initial command stack works. Boom. So yeah. And that totally works. What I would love to do, and we can take a look at this later, but with xState, we may not need to do it, but I would love to take this -1 and change it into an optional. And with an optional, that means that we don't have to know a special value, right? Like -1 means that we're before the beginning of the command stack, and that's basically our way of saying that, hey, the command stack's been reset. But anyway, what we want to do then is here, we're going to add some with state, and boom. And this is one of the nice things about Signal Store is that it's so composable that we can add, our initial state, and this is not what I want. What are you doing, dude? We want initial command stack. There we go. Go ahead and import that. But because it's so composable, we can just add multiple of things, and we've talked about this before, right? Like adding multiple with methods, so that another with method can use a method to add it in a previous with method. What is this? Oh yeah, no unused vars. I think I've got that set as an error. But and in fact, I think if I just do that, it goes away, I believe. Yeah. So anyway, our initial command stack has stuff that is available only, well, it's only used for the command stack itself. And I also think that we can make these private. doesn't it like that? Oh, because I need to fix them. There we go. So if you guys don't know, in Signal Store, we can say, hey, these are private to the store itself by prefacing them with an underscore. This means that they can be used inside of the store, but if somebody tries to access them outside the store, they're not available. I don't think we'll ever need to access the command stack outside of the store. And if we are, we should evaluate why we're doing that and what we can do um, to fix that, right? And I think we can even see here that we were doing that with this command stack, right? It's prefaced, it's a private variable on the store. And so is current command index. That tells me that these two are only used internally to the store and current commands, right? We do need this one. So let's add a computed that will do this too. We're going to go into our grid store. We've got our state. We also want a with computed. And again, we're going to add our state. Going to add some computed values. And so here we can say, hey, our current command right is going to be a computed, and it's going to return that. And because they're signals, we have to read the signal. But we've got, we're back to computing the current command index, right? The current command. And it's private. It can only be accessed inside of the feature, well, inside of the store. And so we're good there. So we've got our current command. If we keep going down, so updating the command stack is something, and clearing old commands. When the cell value changed, cell value change is in effect. It relies on clear old commands and update command stack. We're probably going to need to watch those. We're going to rewrite this to be change cell value. That will come later. So clear old commands is the first thing that we need to add. It's private. That tells us that the command stack is probably all private. So let's move this over. So in our grid store, inside of our state, we're going to add our clear old commands. It's now going to be an underscore. And it's not an effect. It's going to be an RX method. Do we need an RX method? We need the command index. We need the command stack. I think clear old commands can just be a function. Which is another nice thing about confused about have going on. The pipe ends here. That's unnecessary. That comma is unnecessary. But so what we need to grab from the state is the current command index and the command stack. We don't even really need this. That if statement ends there, and that the rest of this can go away, I believe. Oh, I went one too many. There we go. So we need to get the current command index. We can just say, hey, const current command index and current command stack. We'll grab those from the state by destructuring. That works. And then we can just fix these by underscores. I don't have the set command stack yet, but that's okay. So basically what we're doing on clearing old commands is if we're not at the end of the command stack when we run clear old commands, we're just slicing everything from the current command back, right? And so what this winds up doing is, if you guys have ever used the command pattern, you build up basically deltas, right? They're commands to get from state one to state two to state, right? And when you do an undo, you walk backwards up the stack and you do the inverse of that command. So right, if we change something from like a 2 to a 3, then we change it back to a 3 to a 2 and we point to the one above, right? And we walk backwards up the stack. Well, if we've walked backwards up the stack and say they change something, we can't maintain the rest of that stack. So we throw it away and then we start adding stuff again, right? And that's how our undo redo works. Um, oh, um, that's fine. These are signals. And a signal. And a signal. And you know what? Let's refactor these. So we're going to introduce a variable, replace both, and yeah, that works. And we're going to also replace you. And we will introduce a variable, both occurrences. Go. And you're not an any. You're a grid command. Do not introduce any into my code. There we go. And I really don't even need this number here. The other thing that we can do is this command stack length. We can calculate this. So we can say, hey, command stack length. That works. And we can pull that out of here too. And there we go. And so now our length of the command stack will update as our state updates. Um, and then we don't have to, right? So the code reads a little bit better this way, right? We've got our current command index, our command stack. If our current command index is less than the length of our stack, -1, right? Then we set the command stack by slicing it. So we need to get the set command stack in here too. This is interesting, and we'll talk about this because we've talked about it in the past. But let's find set command stack. Boom. Set command stack is an updater, and we'll add it here first because I want to talk about. So set command stack is going to be a function. Yeah. What do the so um we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but let's talk about it, right? Excellent question. So if we go to typescriptlang.org, we go to the doc, not the docs, let's go to the playground, right? It's a standard in ECMAScript. It's a truly private variable in a class. So like if I do const class test class, right? And here I do, let's just say, hey, you're a private, but you're not really private, equals, you can still read me, right? And then we can do truly private, but not me, right? And we'll put a const on a class. So there we go. So now we can do const test equals new test class, right? And if I do console.log, not really private, and here I just do test, and I can even do this, right? And TypeScript complains, right? So the compiler will complain, and we'll get an error in the log, and that's fine. But this is more to show that, like with JS, you can still access it. So if I go ahead and run this, you'll see that you can still read me logged, right? So the private keyword isn't really doing anything, but giving us the private, kind of the private compiler message, right? Which works most of the time, but people can get around that too, right? So now I'm using indexer access on that property. And now we'll see TypeScript doesn't care. And when we run it, boom, you can still read me. And like the reason I started doing truly private variables is that I was having people in unit tests access stuff that I wanted to remain private. And it was creating tests that were brittle because if I would change something internal that I expected to be private, it would cause some weird stuff. So what can we do? We can use like actual ECMAScript private. So if I do console.log and truly private, and I do test dot truly private, again we're getting an error, right? Truly private is not accessible outside of test class because it's a private identifier. This was the same thing we were getting before. So, let's just ignore it. Boom. Right? It failed. So JavaScript immediately fails. Right? Okay, whatever. JavaScript, we know how to get around you. We can use object indexers, right? Again, as soon as I use the indexer, it doesn't know what truly private is because there's no index type on test class. And if we run it, again, truly private is undefined. That indexer doesn't exist. Yeah, should we use that as a standard instead of private in Angular and TS apps? I would leave it up to your team, right? Because in most cases, the compiler error that you get is good enough, but this use case really bothers me. But here, it's not really private, right? The only way we can get at this variable is to add, private getter, and that will return a string. And now we can return this dot truly private. And so now we can do s.private getter, right? And I don't need the function call here. We can go ahead and clear this. We can run it. And now we can see that, the only way to get it truly private is to expose it. So it allows us to do true encapsulation with classes. And so that's why I use it. Yeah, exactly, right? Perfect encapsulation. And so do I recommend it? Absolutely. Should you use it everywhere? Well, that's a different story, right? And there are a couple of concerns that may not be as obvious from the beginning. So let's take out this code right here and this code right here to just see, what we get. Oh, really? They're doing a weak map here? That's interesting because why are we doing a weak map for some? Oh, I know why. And this is what I was going to show, right? So it's not the version of TypeScript that's causing the problem. It's in my config. My config right now, I'm targeting ES 2017, which is a very common ES, right, version of ES 2017. If I set this to ES next, you'll see that it is an ECMAScript truly, like, we don't get extra code, right? I'm targeting ES next. And I think ES 2022 is safe. Is ES 2021? Yes. 2020. So as long as you're targeting, nope, ES 2021 is not. So it's ES 2022 and above, right? Candy, I want cherry candy right now. Oh, that sounds awesome. My TypeScript is rough at best, but the flip-flop in code I see between using accessors and not using accessors messes me up. And so the flip-flop between that, TBD Gamer, comes down to the fact that people just use properties, right? They aren't encapsulating things. And encapsulation is definitely something you see more in Java and like .NET. Um, in JavaScript, quite often they'll just expose the property because before we had true encapsulation, there was no real benefit, right? Um, because people could just access it with an indexer. Um, but so one thing to be aware of, if you use truly private variables in anything before ES 2022, when the standard was released, TypeScript is going to generate a bunch of extra code, right? So you'll see here that it creates this weak map. The weak map just basically goes away whether or not it holds references when its parent class goes away. So it doesn't hold on a strong connection to whatever it references, which allows the garbage collector to clean things up. So this is one thing to be aware of if you're going to use truly private variables and you're going to, target something before ES 2022, you're going to generate more code. And it's significantly more code because as you add more and more private variables, and we can see this, right? So we'll leave it on ES 2017 because that's where it defaulted to. But if I were to add, um, private 2 equals 1, because it's always good to confuse people with, with what your variables point to. It's always a healthy practice. But you can see that we get code here generated and code here, right? The weak map. And if we were to add another class, and we can see this here, like, so test class 2, right? If we look, now we've got test classes truly private and test classes 2 truly, right? So um, there, and then test class 2 has its own truly private. And so, right, we wind up with a lot more code. It's a consideration to take, right? My suggestion, update your configs to target ES 2022. I mean, it's almost a 3-year-old spec by now. Um, if we go take a look, browser support ES 2022. So if we look at can I use for the stuff added in ES 2022, Chrome's had it since version 92, right? Which was released August of 2021, right? So they added it before. Edge has had it since July of 2021. Safari added it in March of 2022. Right, so we've got, right, 2021. So we've had support since a long time ago, right? Since version 92. And Chrome just released version 132. Same here, Edge 128, right? Go away. So we've had support for quite a while in all the major browsers, i.e., you're not going to, if you have users using IE, I'm sorry, right, you're going to have to use the polyfills. But everything else has added support for all of 2022 for multiple years now. I think it's safe to start using it, right? And once you go to 2022, then it's the exact same code. And people people who write ECMAScript regularly are going to understand this. This is part of the ES standard since 2022. Um, so it's not a convention. It's actually part of the standard that allows you to tell ECMAScript, hey, this is private. Um, but good question. Um, so our set command stack. Um, we were gonna use this, right? So we're using the state and we're updating the state, right? So we don't need this command anymore, and we don't need this anymore. And so now we can say, hey, this doesn't refer to what you think it does, but we can try to call set command stack here, right? And it's like, I don't know what that is. Oh yeah, we need to do state. Well, set command stack doesn't exist on state, right? So there are a couple of ways you could do this. One thing you could do is you could convert this over to returning an object, right? So what we could do is here, we could do that. Now we could say, hey, return this. And then, we can do const underscore set command stack, right? Um, and that is actually true. This needs to take in a command stack that is an array of grid commands. And right, we would do our updates and stuff here. So we can basically copy this right here. Let's do that. Boom. It will equal this and need that. And here we are going to say that it is a state dot updates update. Nope, it is not. It is a patch state. And the state we're going to patch it with is, there's our state, right? And then we want to patch it with this stuff right here. We're going to patch it with our stuff here, and we're going to say command stack. We don't need that anymore. Boom. And the other thing we can say is current command index is command stack.length -1. Boom. Oh, and these don't work anymore because we need underscores here. Underscore command stack underscore current index current. Oh, I don't need to do that one. I can just add that, right? And so, boom, there. And so now what I could do is I could just right here add set current command stack, right? And then here I can call set current command stack, right? And this is a really common way for this to happen. Doesn't it like here? I am returning this, right? I'm missing, that matches up there. Matches there. That right? Matching these parentheses is always fun. Oh, I don't have the closing one here. There we go. And I think I need, that matches that. Oh, I took out the print or the curly brace. There we go. So this is a pretty common pattern, right? Where we create functions inside of our with methods, and then we add them, and then we can call them inside of here, and that this is perfectly valid. But I've started using another just another way of doing this, um, which is to just move this code up to here. That all works. And then I don't need this. And now I can just grab it off the state, right? And so that all works. And then the next thing I can do is get rid of this and put parentheses around all of that, rid of that, and I don't need that, and there we go. So I've started doing it this way. That way I don't have to remember, you know, where my functions are. And sometimes I would put my functions down at the bottom. Sometimes I would put them inside. And yeah, I understand it. I'm smart. You are smart. Functional is not always easy, right? But one of the biggest aha moments to me was, hey, I can have multiple with methods. I can have multiple with state. I can have multiple with computed. And that's what we're doing here anyway with these features, right? These signal store features, custom features. We're adding multiples of these. Why not do it within the same feature, right? It makes the code easier to understand for people who are used to writing things this way. If you want to stick with functional, go ahead. There's no problem with it. But I just find doing it this way allows me to just inject state, and then it just kind of works, right? So there's our set command stack. So our reset grid and our set command stack work. Our update grid is not a part of set command stack. Our solver is something else. Unwind bad decision is also something else. Set invalid values for new command. What is this doing? What is calling this method? The thing right above it is what's calling it. And this is unwind bad decision. Okay, so this is part of the solver. We don't need this. I'm going to add a comment here so I remember this. Part of solver. So that one's fine. Set column values to hide for cell. Don't need that. These are part of the pencil marks. So when we do our pencil marks, we'll do that. Check grid for win is not part of this. Check grid for errors is also has errors, is not. Update cell valid, update cell value. Update cell value does call it does call the it does call the command stack. So we'll need to fix that later, but navigate to cell. These also update the command stack. Take a look at that. Update next to focus. So undo. Undo is definitely part of the command stack. We definitely want to add our undo features in here. So we'll go ahead and add that. So undo is a public method. It needs to be on public so that it can be called out. How someone who is not that good with RxJS could get very panicked with this stuff. Yeah, it can become difficult. And like I don't work with RxJS as much, so like on the last stream, I remember I had to look up, like was it with latest from or there was one RxJS operator that I couldn't remember the intricacies of how it worked, just because I don't work with it like as commonly as I used to. So let's get our undo stuff in place, right? Now that we've got our command stack ready. So let's do another with methods that will contain our public methods. So there we go. Need one more paren. And so we'll paste in our undo. So our undo has to do a couple of things. And does it need to be an effect? I don't think it needs to be an effect. I think it can just be function. And I don't think, because this is an observable void, I don't think we need this either. So already undo becomes a lot more simple. I don't think the read only makes sense outside of a class. And so now we can grab all of this stuff. Here. Yep. Paste it in here. And so now we can get rid of this. We need to grab the current command index in the command stack. So we can just say, hey, const current command index and command stack. We've now got those. Tap has a next. So get rid of all of this. Make this easier to understand. So our next uses the current command index in the command stack. Great, we'll pull that out. Get rid of that. Now we're in a better state. So if current command index is less than 0, so we're using current command index a couple of times. Oops. Yeah, that works. And then we want to take a look at our current command. We can grab that. Oops. So boom, we've got that. And now we need to change the cell value and update the current command index, right? We've got, so we're walking back one. So let's find the change current command index. So here's this command. It's a private command, and it's one we're going to be using in our current with methods. So we're going to put it up in this one. So again, we're going to make it private to the store. And take that, and we're going to copy all of that into there, get rid of that. And we can really just say, so we're just going to patch the state. Get rid of, I think I took away one too many. Yeah. So patch state there, and then we can paste that in, and really we only care about the current command index. And we need an underscore, and it's going to equal current command index. And so I want to take a look at, oh, I didn't pass it in, the number. There we go. And then this, we just change this to an underscore. And it's not a this anymore, it's a state. And that should be good. Change cell value. Functional programming gods were mad at God and they struck him dead. Oh, I've got 20 minutes left. My stream has restarted twice. I'm not sure why. I have, oh, I'm having problems with my internet. I can see that. So, I can actually see I wish it would pop these up and tell me. I'm not getting warnings in my stream. I'm going to try and finish out the last 20 minutes. I'll stop at noon. So if I disappear before noon, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's causing this. I am sorry about it. It's frustrating to me. I think it's something to do with my ISP. But I want to take a look at change cell value before we go away. Um, change cell value. So this one calls update cell value. I think that just changes the update cell value. Just updates the cell value. Check grid for errors, check grid for win, and update pencil marks. Those are all so we'll need to add this back. So that method can't be added until we've got checking for errors, the win, and the pencil mark stuff in place. So I'm not going to add that one yet, but we will add it. So we've got our undo, and the crazy thing is that our undo is way easier to understand there than here. So like our undo here relies on an observable, and it has to because it has to be able to grab the current index and command stack. Um, and really all it's doing is saying, hey, if the current command index is less than 0, meaning there is no command, then just return. Otherwise, the command is equal to the command stack at the current command index. And then we change the current command index back 1. One thing we need to do is this change cell value is the important piece here. That's what's doing the undo, right? It's setting it to the previous value. So it's setting the current, right? We're passing in everything from the command, but we're also passing in the previous value. And that's setting that cell back to whatever it was before. So it's either clearing it or setting it to a previous number, right? Things like that. And this becomes way easier to understand in our functional approach, right? We grab the command stack and the current command index from state. And then if it's less than 0, we return, meaning if the current command points to before the stack, then we just return because, right, we don't need to do anything there. Otherwise, we unwind the command by doing the inverse, which is what previous value stores, and some other things about the command. And then we set the current command back to the command before this one. So if we go to our Excalidraw here and just erase everything, boom. So if we think about our command stack, right? Right, we set cell 1, comma 1 to a 3, and the previous value was empty. We'll just 3, comma, right? And then the next thing we do is we set, cell 1, comma 2 to a 4, and it was empty, right? And then we set cell 1, comma 5 to a 6, and it was empty before. And then we're like, oh wait, 1, comma 1 was wrong, so we set 1, comma 1 to we set it to maybe a 2, but it was a 3 before, right? our command pointer as we go through the stack is pointing at the last command run, right? Um, because this is the last thing that it knows about. Um, is it possible to select this? It is. Perfect. So if right, if we undo, what we do is we say, hey, you're currently a 2, like 1 comma 1. This command says we changed it to a 2, but we need to change it back to a 3, right? Um, and so that's what we do. We change the value back to a 3, but then we move our command pointer back. And the reason for that is that if we make a change at any point in time, right? So if we make a change now, we would wipe this out, and then we would start, our command stack would be here, and whatever, right? So we need to know, based on what the state of the game knows about what's been done, what the last command that was run, and that's what current command refers to, right? And so, as we walk backwards, oops, we keep moving this pointer back up the stack. And so like here, we would set cell 1 comma 5 to nothing, right? And then here we would set 1 comma 2 to nothing. And then here, this is our -1. We're pointing before the stack. We have no previous stack. And this is the power of the command stack, right? Because now if we want to redo, which is what we're going to do next, we just move the command pointer down, right? We do what this says. So we set 1 comma 1 to the value of 3, and then we move the pointer down, right? And then redoing this one, we set 1 comma 2 to 4, and we move the pointer down. Redoing this one, right? And we keep moving the pointer down. At this point, we can't redo anything because there's no command, right? So we stop here. We don't do anything once we've reached the end of the command stack. And this is the power of the command stack, is that we get basically free redo and undo if we create our stacks properly, right? Our commands properly. So these commands that we've set up, we know the cell, we know the value that the cell was changed to in the command, and we know the previous value of that cell, right? And so when we walk backwards, we know we just set that cell to the previous value. When we walk forward, we know we set that cell to the current value. And that's how command stack works. And that's, like, I would be willing to bet the majority of the software that you use that uses undo and redo uses command stack like this. Um, so hopefully that helps understand what we're doing. I know that the videos about this in the Sudoku are up on YouTube. So if you guys want to watch a deeper explanation as I build it, I know that they're there. But let's get our redo function in place. Hopefully I copied that. So see if I did. No. So we'll go grab it. We're gonna grab this redo and we're gonna copy that over. You know what? I'm actually going to grab it from here. Because redo is just a public method. It's got nothing on it, and that's it. And this needs to be moved up. There. There's our redo method. And then we can paste the rest of this in. We know we need the current command index. And I'm willing to bet we can just take this code, put it here. now that we've got that, we can take out this and this, which means we can take out this, that. Our next needs that, but not really, because we're going to take out the next anyway. So we can see that we want to look at the length of the command stack. We know we added that, so we've got our command stack length that we can pull here instead. And basically what we're saying is that if we're greater than or equal to command stack length minus 1, we return. Because this is a zero-based index, I was like, wait, what's going on here? It's a zero-based index. And if you really want to mess with your head, go try working in a one-based index language. Yeah, well, and Michael, that's very, hey, Cardinal, thank you very much for support. I love it. But yes, it is very, very similar to the undo redo stuff because it's a very common pattern. Command stack you'll see it almost everywhere that that an undo and a redo is happening, right? So we're just checking, hey, you know, if we're at the end of the command stack, don't do anything. Otherwise, let's grab the current command, which is going to come from our command stack. So our current command is now going to be the next command in the index, right? And so if we look, right, say we've done an undo here, this is our current command, right? Because if we undo, we're going to, you know, undo this command and then point at this as our current command. But if this is our current command and we do a redo, we need to set the value at 1, 2 to 4, but then we need to say, hey, this is now the current last command. And maybe that's the better name for current command is last command. Because I find myself having to explain over and over again what current command means, right? So let's do that refactor because it makes sense, right? But you know, as we're redoing, we need to update the last command that was run. So let's go and see, and we've got a whole bunch of stuff that we're not using anymore because we're removing it from our stuff. But let's go here to the grid state. And let's start by renaming this to be last command run index or last command run. That works. So boom, that changes a whole bunch of stuff. So it changed it here and in the grid store. Oh, it didn't grab all of that. So we're going to grab all of these. And there's a lot of them. And we're going to call it last command run index. Right? That should solve a lot of our issues. We have we've still got a lot of things that are using current command. So here, last command run. We can change this to be last command run index. Great. Same thing here. That works. And here also, that works, right? So now we've made our stuff a little bit easier to understand. The other thing we can do is we're going to comment this stuff out for right now, and uncomment this and become state dot. And let's add our to do here. And there we go. So now our undo and redo work, right? So the piece that we've commented out is the piece that actually makes it work. This is where we're changing the cell value to be the command. Here, we're changing it to be the previous value. So what we're passing into change cell value, it looks like it understands how to read the command and grab the value out of it to set the value. And so then we're pointing backwards up the stack, and that all works. That's our undo and redo. I actually think I am having issues with my internet. So I think I'm going to end now before I jump into anything more. I will be back tomorrow. We'll finish up the undo redo stuff. I think we're done actually. Yeah, we got the change current command index in place. We don't have change cell value yet. And that's the piece that we'll get in tomorrow. We'll get the change cell value in tomorrow. But to get change cell value in, we also need to get update cell value, which will be easy. Check grid for errors. So we're going to have to add in the error and the win condition. So those will also be new features that we'll add. And then update pencil marks also. So we'll have grid errors, grid win, and then pencil marks will be our. These will be new features. And the cool thing about when we get to xState is we won't have to do a whole bunch of these if cases that we're doing. xState will allow us to set states when certain conditions are met. And then we can set what happens when you call next or things like that. And so it will give us some power. I'm really excited. We're almost there. I'm really excited to reach that point. And then just get rid of this crazy. Oh, before we go, let's move right because this code is now pretty large. Let's get it into its own feature. So here we've added right computed and all of these other features. So let's add a new TypeScript file. And this new TypeScript file will be grid dot undo redo feature. So there we go. So we're going to export function with undo redo. Boom. Add that. And it's going to return signal or feature And so nice thing about doing the nice thing about Grid Store is that we can build in Grid Store and then create our features, right? So my with state here and all of this stuff that we added just comes out, and instead we just say, hey, we want with undo redo. Boom, and we import that. And inside of here, we can just paste in our undo redo. So there we go. And so we were able to create the feature in the store, but then move it to its own feature, which is very powerful. And our store stays small, right? So we set up the initial state of the store. We add on some computed methods. We add on the ability to manage the selected cell. We add on the ability to turn on and off puzzle mode, and we add the undo redo ability. And so reading this, we understand what's going on. And if we need to fix something in undo redo, we can go into the feature and say, oh, right, this feature adds some more state. It adds a couple of computed things, but they're only used within private methods. It adds some methods, right? Setting the command stack and things like that. It adds some other methods that clears old commands that must rely on set command stack, right? And then change current command index. And then we add some public methods that must rely on stuff above them. But it's all easier to follow. And that's the thing that I like. Like this grid store, we're having to figure out what things do, what things are related to other things. If I want to replace the undo redo feature, all I need to know is that I replace the stuff in this file. And that it provides two public APIs, right? It provides an undo API and a redo API, and that's it. If I want to replace anything else about this undo redo feature, I can do that, right? And so that's the power about compositional UI over, over like the imperative and monolithic style that we often write in our software. And you can see I'm not immune to this, right? This is a very imperative monolithic piece of code, right? It was written, a little over 2 years ago. But I didn't have the tools to write it differently. And the other thing is, this is what we do under time constraints. And so having better tools that give us better abilities, and where this will really shine is when we get back into unit testing, because now we can unit test the undo redo feature in isolation. I don't have to test it with the entire store in mind, whereas here I would have to. And so we're getting other benefits to going that allow us to go faster, and they also allow us to treat our store more modular, right? So, if I wanted to have a grid that already had a puzzle set up and somebody couldn't turn on puzzle mode, we could set that up, right? Now our game is in a much more powerful state because the data that's used to drive it is in a huge thing, right? So yeah, back tomorrow. Let's go. Yeah, I made so many tests for a signal store feature recently. Nice to be able to compose things since you treat state more much. Exactly. And you can be much better about it. So yeah, I definitely need to end here. There's a lot I could say. I mean, the only thing I'm going to do right now is just commit these files. So, no. moved, undo, redo to Signal Store. Boom. Now we're good. So I will definitely be here tomorrow and Thursday because I am out Sunday and Monday of next week for sure for Monorepo World. We'll look at Thursday. I'm not sure what that day is going to look like due to the travel, but I will keep you informed on Twitter and on LinkedIn. But thank you everybody for being here. And thank you guys for your participation. It was a lot of fun to be back and just, get your ideas, your questions, and just to talk in general. So we'll see you guys next time, and you guys have a great week. Well, a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you.